Hi everyone, Stjepan here. In these chess meditations I'm going to talk about engines and artificial intelligence in chess, what they mean for us chess players and how do they influence the game, and I'm going to try to share my opinions, which are obviously subjective, about the matter, and I'm going to try to say what I think about engines and whether they are good or bad for chess. Now, I come and I have a standpoint that I'm new to chess. I've only been playing for 3 years and I'm trying to improve, and mostly I'm trying to improve through standard ways of improvement. I use books, I analyze my games, I prepare for my opponent, I study openings, I practice tactics and whatever else. And I try to limit my use of engines strictly to post-mortem analysis of my own games, and I try not to get too involved in what the engines are saying, because I think it's much more useful to follow your own thinking process. Now, ever since the engines got involved in chess, and you could say in many other areas of life, when computers started replacing humans, there's been a long discussion as to whether that's good or bad. When it comes to chess, I think that even though it improved the game and it definitely shot up the standard of play significantly, I think that ultimately that's not such a good thing, because chess players may be using their own studying methods now, which don't necessarily include everything they should be doing. Obviously, if you talk about the strongest super grandmasters and grandmasters and older players, they are used to doing many different things to study chess. And new players, especially players around my rating, people who are not that strong, people who are trying to improve, rely too much on engines. And what you have because of that is a straightforward way of thinking which relies upon somebody else's thoughts, in this case the engine's thoughts, and I think that severely limits what you can achieve in chess, and it severely limits how your imagination can progress. Now, if you talk about the greatest players of all time, such as Mikhail Tal or Paul Morphy or Bobby Fischer or Garry Kasparov, some of them had computers at their time, some of them didn't, but not even Garry Kasparov, who has used engines to prepare, didn't rely upon their decisions to create his own thinking patterns, and I think that's a huge problem in chess nowadays. Even Magnus Carlsen and the new 2800s grew up in a sort of non-computer age. They did have engines, but the engines weren't nearly as powerful, and their thinking wasn't influenced by the engines that much. And now, when somebody is trying to improve, almost always in their every training method they are going to use an engine, and I think that's horrible. Not because the engines don't help; they do help. But if you know how to use them properly, if you don't know how to use them properly, then you are going to have plain knowledge without the reasoning behind it. And if you are unable to create your own ideas in chess, then I can't really say that you're a strong player. And of course, if you set up a position on the board and ask the engine what it says, then you're going to be biased. Next time you get into the game, you're going to have the engine's opinion of the position without creating your own first. I think that's sort of avoiding critical thinking in chess, which is horrible, because engines will not be able to help you in the middle game. You can obviously study some position with the engine and then get off the lines and just be unprepared and have this lack of thinking process developed because of that. Ever since the first engines, the first time the engine defeated a human was in 1956. There was an engine called Maniac, developed somewhere in the West, in the States, and it defeated a novice in 20-something moves. And ever since then, the engine started improving. People started to take them more seriously. And I would say the first breakthrough happened in 1988, when the engine called High Tech won the Pennsylvania state championship. It had 4.5 out of 5. It actually defeated 1IM. And even then, you could say that the engines didn't influence chess study that much. Nowadays, the thing is completely different. I'm going to show you just one game. This position was played between AlphaZero and Stockfish, and the same position was played between Ding Liren and Magnus Carlsen. In the Stockfish AlphaZero game, the game was nearly perfect, and the ideas were sort of weird. This is a slightly unpositional move, leaving c4 undefended. This is a strange pattern, and even here on move 10, even though this is obviously the best move AlphaZero played it, I'm not sure that any human would want to have this position. If you look at this, and let's say you have somebody rated 18, 1900 like me, and I'm looking at this position. I want to play the English, and I want to get a position like this, and I'm thinking, oh, this is the correct way. I should take on d5 with my pawn, and this pawn is not a liability. That's completely incorrect. I don't understand this position one bit. If I tried to understand it for an hour, perhaps I could grasp something, but I think it's very hard for weaker players such as myself, firstly, to understand positions like these, and more importantly, to use them in your own games. I mean, how can you use the knowledge you gain from this in your own game? It's very hard. The game continued castles, just leaving this pawn, bishop to g4. h3 gives up the bishop immediately, and I mean, this is not even an engine, this is an artificial intelligence, and how can this help your game? I feel sad when I see players my strength relying on engines, and we are somewhere talking of chess and they say, oh, AlphaZero played this. I'm going to do that in my own game. No, you're not going to do that in your own game because you're not going to understand it. And obviously for somebody learning the English opening, this Anglo-Indian defense, how could it look like this? I mean, okay, let's look at the Dingler and Carlsen game. This is exact same position. G3 was played, b6, bishop to g2, bishop to b7. This is human play. I mean, you want to fianchetto your bishop. This is obviously theory, but it looks human. Castles, a6, preparing for b5, rook to e1, getting the rook to the open file, d6, solidifying the center. Now let's look at this position once again. After g3, queen to b6, d3, a logical move, d5, breaking at the center, bishop g2, bishop e7, cd5, ed5, e4. This looks really weird. I mean, for the engine isn't developing any of his pieces. There are already no more games from this position. The first novelty here, usually players play bishop to g2, queen to b6 is already a very weird move. Queen to b6 has only been played twice, so this is sort of a novelty. d3 has never been played. Bishop to g2 is the normal move because you want to fianchetto your bishop. Now, if you try to study the English opening the way most weaker players study it now with an engine, you're going to get the wrong ideas in your head, and you will not be completely aware of what's going on. I'm sorry if I sound upset, but I am, because I really believe that the engines are ruining the thinking process for chess players. And let me tell you what I do. I mean, once again, this is my subjective opinion, and I don't expect anybody to follow it, but I truly believe that using standard methods such as chess books and plainly looking at the board and thinking is much better than using the engine. Perhaps your ideas are going to be wrong. Perhaps you're going to make bad moves during the game, but you're going to be able to create your own ideas. And if you use the engine, you don't create your own ideas, you follow theirs, which you don't necessarily understand. And even though it helps the 2,800 players when they leave their supercomputers for 4 days to find the best move on move 21 in the semi-Slav, you're not 2,800, and you don't know the 21st move of the semi-Slav because you're not that well versed in theory. It's not helping you. You need to be able to create your own ideas. Why? Because if you are unable to come up with your own ideas in the late opening, early middle game, you can't expect yourself to come up with good moves and good plans later on in the game. Most people use the engines to prepare the first 10 moves, then they're on their own, and the worst thing is, even though they don't necessarily blunder, they're unable to think for themselves. And just, if you want to listen to my opinion, try to think of chess and think of positions and think of openings and think of strategy and think of patterns with your own head. Use the engines in a very limited way. Try to use the engine to correct your own mistakes. What I do when I finish a chess game, I will first analyze it by myself over the board or at the channel. And only after I'm done, I'm going to turn on the engine to tell me whether I was right or wrong, but I'm not going to use the engine unless I have an opinion. Don't allow the engine to create your opinions. Just use it to correct them. Use it to correct them because then you will have already created an idea of your own. I hope this made some sense. I wanted to talk about this topic for a while now. I would really appreciate your input on this one. I think it's a crucial topic in today's world, especially when there are 10 jobs disappearing every day due to due to computers and artificial intelligence. And they truly believe that they will never replace the human factor in chess, and that watching robot arenas of artificial intelligences playing chess will never be as fun as watching humans play, and there will always be a B league left for humans. Let me know what you think. I hope you weren't bothered too much by listening to my rant and my opinions, and thanks very much for watching. Stay tuned for more chess. Bye bye.